discovery demonstrated that life was much more complex than anyone had previously envisioned. Himself a confirmed evolutionist, Francis Crick, who received a Nobel Prize for this discovery, came to confess that a structure like DNA could never have emerged by chance.
I can't hear it. Can you hear it?
No, not really.
They can also not hear it.
Slightly.
Better you speak.
Here I speak. So what we just heard here, I mean, it was said that the structure of DNA was discovered in 1954 by Francis Crick and James Watson. So that's basically what a little about the history. Now he's explaining about actually DNA and the complexity of DNA. That is, it's a gigantic molecule existing inside the nucleus of the cell. Yeah. And that's where a lot of our inherited genes are stored on the DNA. They say that all our physical traits are stored on the DNA. Actually, it's not right. There's some other things that are stored elsewhere, but it's definitely a lot of our traits are stored on the DNA. Just turn this around and you can hear the sound for and then I'll just leave for 1 minute also. It's okay. Then I'll be more on.
The DNA code is made up of a sequence of 4 different bases. If we think of each one of these bases as a letter, DNA can be likened to a data bank made up of an alphabet of 4 letters. All the information about a living thing is stored in this data bank. If we attempt to write down the information in the DNA, this would take up approximately 1 million pages. This is equal to an encyclopedia 30 times bigger than the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is one of mankind's greatest single accumulations of information. But this incredible information is stored in the tiny nucleus of our cells, measuring about 1,000th of a millimeter in size. It is calculated that a DNA chain small enough to fill a teaspoon has the capacity to store all the information contained in all the books ever written. Of course, such an amazing structure could never have been formed by chance. The theory of evolution, which sees life as the result of mere coincidences and haphazard happenings, is helpless to explain anything in the face of the incredible complexity of DNA. It is evident that the DNA, the cell, and all living beings are products of an exalted and perfect creation.
John, did you get partly what was explained here?
Kind of.
Huh? Kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah. So they explained that DNA is an incredibly long molecule. That there is a number of 4 different kinds of molecules which form letters. And these long sequences of these molecules, they write out a long text called the genetic code. And this code is what is actually where all our inherited material is stored. And they also gave just one amazing figure that the amount of information written on each DNA in each cell is an amount of information that's equal to, was it 40 volumes of Encyclopedia Britannica was one of the largest compilations of information.
Was it 40 times the whole encyclopedia?
Yeah, 40 times the whole encyclopedia. And that's all stored inside, a cell. The nucleus of the cell is something like, the nucleus is 1/1000th of a millimeter in size in general, and inside that is stored this amazing amount of information. They also said that if you had just 1 teaspoon of DNA, that all that ever been written in history of mankind could be stored on just 1 teaspoonful of DNA. And that's one of the great discoveries of the second part of the 20th century. That actually there is information written in our cells. It's not only chemistry, but actually there's a text in there. And it's just like a computer code. And I want to say a little about how computer codes work. You might know that computer codes are just strings of ones and zeros. Everyone knows that, isn't it? Yeah. And how is information stored by just by strings of ones and zeros? Well, of course there's a code. There are different codes. There's different alphabets, computer alphabets. You can, for example, have an alphabet of where there are 6, which is 6 numbers, 6 ones and zeros, and that's 1 unit or 1 letter, or that's what's called 1 hex. Hex refers to 6. I think it's Latin. Is it Latin for 6 or Greek for 6? I'm not sure. You can see that if you combine, you have 6 ones and zeros. How many times how many different combinations are possible with 6 ones and zeros? Any quick mathematician?
12, you mean 6 ones and 6 zeros? 12?
No.
Or just... No, I'm asking 12 figures or
No,
just 6?
Just 6 figures. How many combinations possible of 6 ones and zeros? Huh?
2 to the power of 6.
What?
2 to the power of 6.
2 to the power of 6, yeah. And can you explain what that means?
61, 128, no.
64. Yeah.
No, 64.
No, it's
No, not 62.
32. I think just
2 up to 5 is 32. So
64.
Yeah. So I mean, if you just have one, then there are 2 possibilities, 1 and 0. If you have 2, then it's first 2, and then it's 2. It's 2 by 2. That's 4, and it's 3. Then it's 2 by 2 by 2 ways to combine ones and zeros. That's 8. Is that clear to everyone? So again, and then 16, 32, 64 ways of combining. And if you have 64 possible ways of combining ones, these ones and zeros, then actually you can represent 26 letters, 10 numbers, space, start, stop, and also some other figures. And this is actually how computer codes they work. They have just, it's written with a particular code, with a particular alphabet. There's a place where there's a symbol that means start. So, and then of course you need a reader and a translation system. And then you can just the whole text is written until you get to the symbol that says stop, and then you have a piece of information there. That's how computer codes work. I understand nowadays they actually operate not with 6 but with 8, because they need so many more ways to combine. But that's still it's the same principle. And DNA works actually the same way. The genetic code of the DNA works in precisely the same way. There is as I say, there are 4 letters on the 4 chemicals, and in each place there can be 1 out of 4 letters, and so what does that give? How many? I mean, of course, at the first place you have 4. If you have 2 combinations, what is that? 4 by 4? 16, yeah. And then again 4 by 4 by 4, you have 64. Yeah. And it has turned out that actually in the DNA code, the genetic code is operating with 3 digits and 64 combinations. And why is that? Why does it need 64 combinations? Well, actually it turns out that the genetic codes on the DNA corresponds to 20 specific kind of molecules called amino acids. Everyone heard the word amino acid. And amino acids are very important in the body because proteins are made out of amino acids. And we all learn from our mother you have to make enough proteins, isn't it? To make them strong. So proteins are very important in the body. And proteins are molecules which are actually made of a long strings of amino acids, hundreds of amino acids arranged in a long string, and then and these strings again actually they are folded and created into all kinds of shapes which perform all kinds of functions inside the bodies, inside our cells. Actually, there are machines which are made of proteins, and there are different structures, and so many things are made out of proteins. And each protein is this particular sequence of 20 different amino acids in a long series. And each amino acid is coded for what is called a codon. It's a combination of 3 of these DNA letters, which there are 64. But there are each of these amino acids is coded for by a particular combination of these 4 letters. So that on the DNA, each protein is there coded, and then by this particular alphabet. Does it make complete sense to everyone what I'm saying? Did I lose it? Did I just lose everyone?
Better write it down. I mean, it's
Yeah.
good. I mean, something.
I'm not going to write it down, but I'm going to show another film clip. I'm just trying to explain it so it would be easier to catch it. Huh?
Film myself is good.
Yeah. Here.
I have some computer speakers over in the...
You have. Can I get them quickly? That would be fantastic. So, okay, here I'll show you another animation that shows actually how this information on the DNA is being first read by a molecular machine that can read these texts, and then after that it's been translated into building of proteins. And savings. and it's interesting. Also, this man you're seeing here is an interesting character. His name is Dean Kenyon, and he was, he's still living, but he's actually quite a famous biochemist. And in the 1960s, he was one of the leading researchers in the origin of life, and he was an evolutionist, and he wrote a very famous book that was called Biochemical Predestination, where he was arguing that life could arise spontaneously. Actually, the properties of chemistry is such that life would naturally arise, and that book became very popular, bestseller book, and he was known as a very big chemist, and like one of those. Prabhu would talk about. He was one of those chemists who believed life could be made from chemistry. But then, some years after he had published his book, he was keep on researching. He started getting some doubts, and of course the whole interview here with him explains the doubts he had. And ultimately, he became one of the first intelligent design scientists who came out and said, actually, we are dealing with something here that is simply not possible to have risen by itself. He thought that proteins could have risen by themselves. He found out they cannot, and especially when he found that actually there's this link like chicken egg, because they have the question, who came first, the chicken or the egg? And that's, it's bewildering. You don't have one without the other. Similarly, we don't have proteins without DNA and DNA without proteins. And the question was, okay, proteins arose first, but then how did DNA come? If you had DNA first, how did proteins? And ultimately, you just conclude it's not possible. It's simply not possible. So this whole story explained like that, and he's telling that. But here we are. The film shows again what happens when proteins are being made from the DNA.
The origin for even the simplest of cells. So the concept of the intelligent design of life was immensely attractive to me and made a great deal of sense, as it very closely matched the multiple discoveries in molecular biology.
In the years since Kenyon's rejection of chemical evolution, science has revealed the details of an entire system of information processing that bears the hallmarks of intelligent design. With computer animation, we can enter the cell to view this remarkable system at work. After entering the heart of the cell, we see the tightly wound strands of DNA, storehouses for the instructions necessary to build every protein in an organism. In a process known as transcription, a molecular machine first unwinds a section of the DNA helix to expose the genetic instructions needed to assemble a specific protein molecule.
Okay, stop here. Did you get what happened here? Everyone? Yeah, the DNA is it opens. It's wind up, and in order to read it, it's been opened like that. That's what's happening here. Okay.
Another machine then copies these instructions to form a molecule known as messenger RNA. When transcript...
Nej, det er ikke en fabrik. DNA, det er en databank. Det er sådan, det svarer nærmest til, at hvis at du er ude på fabriksgulvet, så er der, der bliver en bestilling på. Sorry, I should speak English. Sorry. Yeah. So he asked, is it DNA like a factory? No, it's not a factory. It's like a data bank. And it's like if you're out in the factory, there's an order, we need this particular machine, we have to construct this particular machine. So then the foreman out on the factory, he will tell, yeah, there's a boy, there's a little boy, he said, go and get the technical drawings for that machine. So the boy, he will run into the data bank, which is that's a nucleus of the cell. And then he'll go in there and he will look at all the drawers and files and like that. And then one he'll pull out a drawer, and then he will take up the drawings, and then he'll make a copy. He will not take the original, because the original has to stay, otherwise it'll get lost. But he'll take it up and he'll make a photocopy. He'll make a photocopy of that and put it by that. And then he'll run out, again out in the factory, and with a photocopy of the, and then they'll have a whole assembling instructions. First we take this and put this here and this and this here. Actually, this is what's happening. And the DNA is a data bank. And the message, this RNA, that's a boy that will bring the messages.
Mission is complete. The slender RNA strand carries the genetic information through the nuclear pore complex, the gatekeeper for traffic in and out of the cell nucleus. The messenger RNA strand is directed to a two-part molecular factory called a ribosome. After attaching itself securely, the process of translation begins. Inside the ribosome, a molecular assembly line builds a specifically...
I don't know if you can see what's happening here precisely. Let's see here. So up here, this is the copy of the DNA that is now being read. These ones you see here, they are, you might say, workers that are bringing the particular molecule needed according to the instruction. The instruction is up here. Each three of these molecules form one particular letter that corresponds to one amino acid. There's one of these that has a, you see actually here on this, over here is the third one coming. He has three of these, which particularly correspond to one combination of these up there. So when, for example, this guy, he comes here and he finds out, this is my particular combination of letters, they fit together. Then he comes and he drops his particular amino acid there. Another one comes and he finds this is my combination, he sets his amino acid there, and the third one, and like this. In this way the whole chain is being assembled. Understand?
Is all protein a product of DNA?
Yeah. All the proteins synthesized in the cell is that's been written on the basis of DNA instructions. Yeah.
That makes it very easy to challenge even the learned scientists who are like scholars and talking about like evolution.
Yeah. Because this is here it's not a physical process. It's actually like it's a digital process. Easy, but again you have to also know all the jargon, all the language, and they'll still be able to bewilder you if you just come with this, because they will. There's actually many more complexities to the arguments when you look at it in detail. But you can definitely. There's no, and that's the point. There's definitely no physical process that can create such a system. Dean Kenyon and so he concluded that there's no way. But I say by word geography they can still bewilder if you don't know all the technical details.
And is it also it's extremely fast, huh?
It's fast. Each cell produces something like 1,000 proteins like that a second. It's wild.
It's fast.
It's incredibly fast.
Makes me feel that I should not move, otherwise I'll break something.
Yeah. That's why, even though we think we're not doing anything, but so much is happening in every split second in our I mean,
Sequence chain of amino acids. These amino acids are transported from other parts of the cell and then linked into chains often hundreds of units long. Their sequential arrangement determines the type of protein manufactured. When the chain is finished, it is moved from the ribosome.
How can they see this?
how can they see this? I mean, that's also very impressive. Actually, they cannot see it. It's too small to see with electron microscopes like that. I mean, well, you can see, like, even just the structure of the DNA, this double helix structure, you cannot see with DNA. So they have all kinds of indirect ways of analyzing and assessing like that. For example, with the structure of DNA, the way they were analyzing and finally concluded that it was a double helix. You know, understand the word helix, double spiral. They actually extracted and concentrated DNA, so actually then you had just a crystal of DNA, and then they were shooting laser rays through it and getting a kind of a shadow image on the screen. And then by analyzing the shadow, then by of course thousands of hours of work and analysis, they finally concluded it's a double helix. So they have it's all kinds of indirect ways of, and it's in one sense it's impressive in itself, how they've been to uncover all this and it's going on, and it's like tens of thousands of biochemists involved in this all over the world.
Is everyone agreeing? I mean, also the opponents. Everyone agree that this is actually the fact.
Oh yeah, that's not controversial.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's simply. I mean, there are many things it's just the top of the iceberg they've uncovered, but these things are not. That's not being debated. That's because it can be demonstrated practically. For example, genetic engineering, GMO like that. That's they're tinkering with the DNA and the code actually, taking part of the code from a fish and then putting it into a tomato DNA and then they're creating something. This is actually what they're doing. And so there's no.
What would that do to a tomato?
Good question. You probably could. Some fish can tolerate temperatures below 0, so maybe you could have a tomato that you can freeze a tomato and still be all right or something. I don't know.
These are called genetically modified. I mean, they're not for us to consume, but that's what is happening.
That's what they do in genetically modified organisms. Yes.
I remember hearing in a lecture they made a fluorescent Christmas tree because some fish are fluorescent.
Yeah, so they can do
self-fluorescent.
Yeah.
Christmas tree.
Yeah, so that's what they're doing, and in one sense it's simple, and the thing is it's harmless like that. But then again, it might not be so harmless after all. It's like sometimes when we, on the computer, you can go into a certain folder. For example, you have the system folder, and when you open that, it says warning. That changing the